Open a world of instant mastery with Breville Plus and discover guided recipes all tested and tuned to your Breville oven. So you get perfect meals. First time, every time. Enjoy the confidence of cooking with Breville Plus.
Hello. Hi, I'm Grant Curley. Welcome to Breville Plus, and today we're going to talk about how to reheat anything. We're in the Chef's App studio, and we're going to take your questions today on how to reheat anything. I want some serious hardball questions today, okay? So, like, I don't know, just dream it up. You've probably had all the problems at home before reheating last year's Thanksgiving. Don't let it happen again this year. We're going to talk about everything you need to help you have success reheating. Why isn't it called recooking? Should we start with that? I'd like to. Okay, so recooking, reheating. Sometimes I feel like it is recooking. When you cook something, you're trying to add the right amount of heat to change the food chemistry, to alter a lot of the material in the food, right? To melt fats, to denature proteins, to souffle the souffle, and then once it's cooked, you enjoy it. And then when you want to reheat something, you're usually just trying to add just enough heat to bring it back to the beginning, right? So a basic strategy I'm going to talk about as we get into this is generally when you're reheating, you want to think about it like you're recooking, right? Like you're just cooking it again. So go back to the beginning. If you deep fried something, you might not want to deep fry it, but you might want to reapply that same heating profile, whether it's in an oven or what. Like if you deep fried something and you want to reheat it, you're probably not going to reheat it in sous vide. Or a microwave? Probably not. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple things on the whiteboard, unless you get bored when I do that. And then you're going to post your questions, I'm going to read them, and I don't know, we're just going to see what happens. I've never done this before. This is it. First time. Bear with me. Okay, first question. Can you share any general reheat rules? Like, if something's breaded, should I put it on a rack? Well, yes, I would say so. So let's talk about that for a second. If you have something that's breaded, you probably put breading on it to make it crispy, crunchy on the outside. And the inside's probably juicy, tender, like a nugget or something like that. So if you have something that's breaded, just like when you first cooked it, ideally, whether it was a fryer, right, that's removing moisture from the surface all over the place, or you air fried it on an air fry rack with your Joule Smart oven or something like that. The reason why you have racks like this is that way you can put the breaded food on and all that moisture will leave the top of the food and the bottom of the food, right? Like if you put a crispy breaded tender on a regular sheet tray, it's soggy on the bottom. Then you got to flip it and all that good stuff. So as a general rule, yes, I would put it on a rack. Anything you want to dry out, put it on a rack, as long as it's not going to drip everywhere. In which case, put a tray under the rack, right? Okay, so I'm going to read more questions, but I do want to talk about general reheating kind of strategy. So I got to thinking, like, can you draw some common denominators or how to help folks think like a chef if I'm going to reheat something, right? Okay, and let's see if this works for you. I'm going to try to get all, like, I don't know, Good Will Hunting Rain Man on you over here. Let's see, I'll go slow. So I drew a little chart here, okay? This is temperature. Okay, for the sake of food conversation, I'm starting at 140 degrees Fahrenheit down here, 475 degrees up here, which is like kind of reheat safe-ish temperature, depending on what you're reheating. And then 475, most ovens and fryers don't go hotter than that, and you don't need hotter temperature than that. Even if you're reheating pizza, you don't need to go to 750 degrees again. Over here, I've got time, but I've got, you'll see 2 hours on this side, 2 minutes on this side. I can't think of anything that reheats in less than 2 minutes. Throw it in the chat if you can think of it. And then 2 hours, I couldn't really think of anything that really requires more than 2 hours. I reheated like half a whole hog before, and it only took about 2 hours. So if you're going to braise something like the first cook, it might take 8 hours or 48 hours of sous vide, right? Because that goes back to adding enough heat to where you're unwinding collagen and proteins and all that stuff. But that same roast or even prime rib, you're not really recooking it, you're just reheating it. You just want to add enough heat. And that's like kind of dimension thickness based, really. So 2 hours to 2 minutes, I can't imagine ever reheating anything longer than 2 hours. But for instance, 140 degrees, 2 hours, here's when you might want to do that. Say I got a prime rib, right? That I use my Chef Steps code to get a Black Label Snake River Farms amazing prime rib for the holiday this season. And then I cooked it with autopilot in my dual oven. And then curveball, a bunch of vegetarians came over, and you have a lot of extra, okay? So this is one where you might want to take a prime rib over the next few days and reheat it with precision. So I'm going to draw a couple categories here. Down here, I've got large foods with precision, like where you care about the temperature. So this is like a prime rib. Prime rib. We could probably think about some other things too. Over here, opposite end of the spectrum, we have tiny foods that we just want to change the texture of, like a chicken nugget, right? I don't really reheat chicken nuggets to precise temperatures. I just want it juicy on the inside and crispy on the outside. In that instance, you're going to want to crank up the temperature and crank down the time generally, right? So a chicken nugget or chicken tender, chicken nugs, you want just enough time to where the interior doesn't dry out, but enough heat to crisp up, re-crisp, reheat the outside. So generally you have smaller, this is going to sound like duh, and we can get into any of this deeper and more specific examples if you throw up your questions. But check this out. The hotter the temperature and the less time, smaller, drier, crispier foods. Sounds kind of logical. Think french fries, chicken nuggets, anything like little crispy tidbits. Down here, less temperature, less time, so slower and more mellow precision temperature. Prime rib, a lobster tail, a fillet of salmon, something like that, right? Today, I've got this prime rib here, and there's about a million ways you could reheat this. I could just chop it up into little 1-inch cubes and saute it, but if you want to recreate that original result, how do you do that? This just goes back to kind of recook it in a way just from theory of where you started. So this started with low precision temperature for a long time. What's the best tool to do that? Sous vide. Would I put it in the microwave to reheat it? You could, but you have little to no control over the temperature being added to the meat. Again, sounds logical, but if I want to reheat this and I want to reheat it sous vide, again, because it was really expensive and I got it with my discount from Snake River Farms and Chef Steps and it was really expensive, I'm going to use sous vide because sous vide is going to add just the right amount of temperature to not overcook it, in fact, make it more tender, but you can't sous vide your way to a crust. So if I have my prime rib, it could be this thick, this thick, this thick. I rewarm it sous vide. Then I can put it in the oven to air fry it, to broil it, or if you really want, you can pan sear it. So this is, again, just like if I was going to do a roast initially, nice long mellow cook, and then a sear. Or the reverse sear is like a sear and a cold roast, and then a low mellow cook to add the heat over time, right? So in this case, I'm going to do an inverse. All right, Edward. This is a great question. How would you reheat barbecued ribs? Let's see. Oh, barbecued ribs. Are they single? Are they a rack? Are they still in the pig? Oh. Okay, so barbecued ribs, let's say you cooked them for 7 hours already in your Traeger / Joule / sous vide / oven situation. And now I've got leftover ribs. They're cold and they're in the fridge. Okay? So it took me 8 hours to originally cook them because I was cooking them and making them tender right? So they're just like falling off the bone, but now they're cold and they're in the fridge. So because ribs are, what, maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inch at the thickest, all that matters to recook them or reheat them is the thickness on them. So again, basically say a rib is something where I want to keep as much moisture on the inside, but maybe a little bit of crust on the outside. So what I would do is pick a method that as it's reheating is maintaining moisture. So wrap it in foil, low temp oven, so like 140. Put it in a Ziploc bag, low temp sous vide, maybe 140, something like that, right? Then you can actually put it on the charcoal grill again, or you can broil it, you can air fry it, you can pan sear it if you want a crust or something like that. Here's something really interesting I want to talk about with recooking, reheating. Okay, this one's going to blow your minds, but after all these years, I still see this problem all the time. Really, if I cooked, say, a prime rib or barbecue ribs or something like that, let's use this scale again. Let's say sous vide is in this range here. Let's just say this is boiling water. 212 degrees, which we don't ever usually do 212 with sous vide. Here's maximum water temp. Water boiling. I cooked my ribs. I know I drew 2 hours here, but let's change that to 24 hours. Okay, so I cooked my ribs at 140 degrees in the sous vide for 24 hours. And now I want to reheat them. And the same thing can happen with barbecue. So your barbecue, your Traeger, your whatever, you try to keep it at exactly 200 degrees and maintain a rib temperature, if you're really monitoring the ribs, at 155 degrees, 160 degrees, the ribs, right? And that's making sure the collagen's breaking down, but they're staying juicy. In a reheat or a recook, you can still overcook those ribs. Even if you cook them for 24 hours sous vide at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, if I go back to the reheat and add 20 more degrees, or I put them in the oven, you can still overcook them. And the proteins will tighten up and get firm and dry out on you, right? So whenever you're reheating anything, you want to reheat it to the lowest common denominator from before, never higher. I can't think of any time you really want to reheat it higher. Maybe there's something out there. I don't know, let's think about it later. Okay, Bob, how to reheat roasted cauliflower. All right, reheat roasted cauliflower. Let's see here. Cauliflower, is it big? Is it little? I don't know. But I want to add this. As you guys are asking questions here, let's get really technical. So I want to reheat cauliflower, and I want it to be like this. How do I do it? So choose a food and choose a outcome. Like I want to reheat cauliflower, but I want it crispy, but still juicy on the inside, and it's small. The more specific you get, the more fun this will be, and the more I can give you like a really helpful answer too. So how do we reheat cauliflower? I'm going to assume that they're like florets or something that you roasted in the oven. All right, and the first time you roasted them, they're kind of dry and golden on the outside, and the inside was juicy. And now when they come out of the fridge, they're like flabby and rubbery the next day, right? Like they're floppy little cauliflower florets. Just like when you have a flour that's like loses its hydration. Cauliflower and veggies, something like cauliflower especially, a little bit different rules for reheating it because it's way more flexible. You're not going to be able to bring back that perkiness that it was fresh, but you could deep fry them, you could air fry them, you could char them or broil them. And with most veggies like brassicas, even potatoes, cauliflower, something like that, generally I would reheat them with like the most heat the fastest possible, just to get some more texture back into the outside of the food before they completely dry out. So even if it's big or little florets, generally I'm going to air fry them super hot. You could even deep fry them if you wanted. Probably won't sous vide them in the microwave because they're just going to be a soggy mess, right? So I'm assuming you want nice crispy textures. So super hot and super fast for something like cauliflower. What's this one? How to reheat fish. E.g. black cod. That was cooked whole. When was the last time anybody saw a whole black cod cooked? But I'll take it. Okay, so I cooked this thing whole. I made a big mistake because I shouldn't have cooked it whole. Now I got a ton of leftovers. What are you going to do? All right, So black cod, it's one of my favorite fish. It's super fatty, and I'm gonna get specific here. Black cod's very, very fatty. It's very oily, so it's pretty forgiving. Okay. This is kind of tricky because, like, I don't know, you could flake it off, you can cut it small. Do you want it reheated whole again? This goes back to what do you want it to be like? So if I had a whole black cod that was cooked in the fridge, I could see pulling up some meat and breaking up flakes and sauteing it. I could see wrapping the whole thing in foil and putting it at a low temperature in the oven, and then taking the foil off and then like air frying it until it's crispy. You could do a lot of things with that. But again, I'm gonna assume you don't wanna overcook the meat. So I'm gonna go with 2, what's that?
We're doing it live.
Can you not hear me? They're saying I gotta swap my mic.
No, we can hear you.
Oh. How do I reheat pizza slices? Oh, I'm glad somebody brought this up. Okay, here we go. I think you're not gonna be able to hear me for any moment, or you're gonna add a mic. You're not gonna kill this one. Oh, there you go. Man, this is great. Okay, how do I reheat pizza slices so they are close to straight from the pizza parlor? Oh, I love that question. Okay, here's why I like the reheating pizza question. It's one of the few foods I would say that when you're reheating it, you don't really want to reheat it like how you first cooked it. And I'm going to assume, like if you happen to have some pizza here or something that's cold. Look at this. It was, crispier when it started. Now it's all cold and flabby and tough, chewy. Maybe it's even dried out. There's some foods that you really want to add moisture back into. I didn't really say this, but most of the foods that you're going to want to reheat, you're actually trying to get moisture off of that food as you reheat it, right? So anything crispy, anything small, usually trying to dry out the outside without drying out the inside. Pizza, most of the time, you're probably going to want to add more moisture back into it. The crust is dried up. They desiccate quick. Look how thin this thing is. Didn't stand a chance. It's a day later, 2 days later. So you want to add moisture back in. A couple ways you can do that. I personally like to take like 2 or 3 slices, wrap them in foil, add a little bit of water inside the foil, and like you could just air fry it. So think 450 degrees until you hear inside the foil that. Then you're going to open the foil, and guess what? They're going to be soggy, really soggy. But then you just open up the foil and let it go for a little bit longer. So even if you did like a reheat trick in a pan with pizza, even if you did it in a paper bag with a little bit of moisture, which is a really cool trick. My mom used to reheat all biscuits and bread and baguettes and all that sort of stuff when we were growing up by throwing it in a paper grocery bag and then running the paper grocery bag under the kitchen sink and throwing it in a super hot oven. It made all the bread like brand new and fresh again. But the first phase is getting moisture all the way through the bread or pizza, right? And then it's going to seem soggy. And then the second phase is just drying out the outside of that thing again, right? So again, 2-phase, hot and fast for bready things with moisture, then hot and dry to get the moisture off the surface. That's how I'd reheat pizza. I don't know if that answered your question or if that was helpful. I hope so. Is there a better way to reheat things with multiple components, such as a burger or Taco Bell taco without separating them? Oh, that's like, whoo, that's a tricky one. Say I got a taco, and I've got ground meat over here, and I've got lettuce over here, and it's got this other thing that I don't want to heat up over here. How do you do that? That's a tricky one. How do you reheat it perfectly without taking it apart?
You
Man.
can say anything.
No, I like the question. I don't know if I can take this one. Honestly, I would take it apart. That's what I do with burgers and all sorts of stuff. I'll take it apart because I hate microwave reheated lettuce. It gets all brown and slimy. I'll like open it up the burrito or the taco or the burger and you claw it out, because it's probably late at night. And then you put it back together and microwave it or bake it. Then you put the sprinkled lettuce back in. I can't think of a way where you would reheat a burger or a taco or anything like that, a burger, burrito, taco, where it's got meat and lettuce and tomatoes. There's no way you're going to drive until you have like a microwave that has super directional, like multiple, you can point it at just the meat and then avoid pointing it at the lettuce. Yeah, until you can do that, you're going to have to take it apart. No way. Or optimize for one thing. Like I want the meat I'm okay if the meat's a little cold, as long as the lettuce isn't slimy. We could talk about that. Again, give me a result. What are you after? What's the food, and then what's the after? Okay. I don't know why that's up there. What am I supposed to do this? Hey, we're 20 minutes into the show now. Cool. I hope we answered some questions. Jeffrey, how would you reheat a pasta dish like lasagna? I've always done it in the oven in foil, but it gets dried out on the outside and cold on the inside. That's a good question with a specific desired outcome. I like it. Okay, so lasagna. I just made probably my best lasagna I've ever made a couple nights ago. And I left it at my friend's house, and I don't know if I'll ever get to try it again. I'm really pissed off about that. Here's how I like to reheat lasagna. If you don't care about it, microwave it. But Jeffrey does. So he said it usually gets dried out on the outside, and it's cold on the inside. And here's also why I don't like microwaves for lasagnas. Going back to the multiple things, the proteins in the cheese can get hammered and end up like really rubbery. It's probably happened to you. What I like to do with lasagna is low temperature oven. Even if it's a big piece or like a whole half of lasagna or whatever, low temperature oven covered, right? So 250, 300 degrees covered to where it's nice and even heat. And then you can blast it on the top again, getting it crusty. If you're just doing slices, so you got a half lasagna, when it's ice cold from the fridge, this is how I like to do it. Because even if I'm gonna do 2-3 portions, I like to cut the portions first when it's cold. I like to take those pieces, maybe microwave them on low for like a minute, but low setting, or in the oven, very low, like 150, 200 degrees for a little bit, then sear them. I like them crispy and crunchy. Jeffrey doesn't, it sounds like. You want to not dry it on the outside. So I would keep it covered no matter what. If you want it like wet and soft and gooey on the outside and inside, keep all the moisture in, keep it covered the entire time, and do a mid-range long temp thing, you know, like 250, 300 degrees for 40 minutes or something like that. It'll say gooey everywhere, inside and out. Okay, pizza follow-up question. How much water would you add for pizza, and how would you add it? Would you sprinkle a bit on the bottom? Like this. I never sprinkled water. Maybe you can sprinkle water. Okay, so it never occurred to me to sprinkle water, like with my hands. I guess I'm gonna try that. How much water would you add? So a couple ways to do it. Watch this. If I put, let's just do it. I'm drinking this water, but it's now a part of the show, so forget it. This oven's on super high heat. This pizza's floppy. This is not trick pizza. This is real pizza. Look at this. So if I just put this pizza in, it's gonna be like hard and tough and chewy. Coming back to that later. Most ovens have a bottom of an oven. You do that. That was maybe like, what? A sip that I sprinkled in there. The main thing here is, you can't really see it, but this oven's like packed with humidity. It's like, psh. Remember, water expands, or you're just finding out right now, water expands 1,600 times when it goes from liquid to steam. So that fills the oven super fast, and that's moistening up the pizza. It's actually transferring heat faster to the cheese and the crust. And you can do that once or twice over a minute or 2 or 3. And you might find that the pizza is really soft, and it's actually starting to get like, this seems too soft. That's a good thing. That's all that moisture is returning to the inside of the pizza. Then towards the end, just let it ride out, and you're gonna see it's like nice and crackly and crispy again. It's gonna be like brand new pizza again. Brand new pizza. I got something in my eye. Let's see here. How do we reheat anything that was originally fried? Okay, I like this one. So, most foods that you are air frying at home that you think are healthy were already deep fried, okay? If deep frying is considered unhealthy to you. So those were already fried, and you'll notice the instructions on the back have air frying, bacon instructions, as well as deep frying instructions. But let's say you deep fried whatever. Again, it's probably small, and you want it juicy on the inside and crispy on the outside. It's kind of the same situation as something like pizza. You might want a little bit of moisture in the beginning, and that will actually lacy up whatever the breading is. Like if it has a breading or something like tempura or, I don't know, chicken nuggets or breaded, you can add a little bit of moisture to help expedite moisture going to the middle even. But then the second half, you're going to dry it out like crazy. So if I was going to heat up something that was deep fried like chicken nuggets, they're deep fried. The second part, they're frozen or fridge, regardless. You could do 2 phases, which is 1 low temp and then super maximum air fry heat. Again, the low temp is to unfreeze it or to add the right amount of heat to the middle without drying it out. And then the air fry is to really blast the outside. I can't think of anything I want to deep fry to reheat. I was thinking about that before we started. Like I deep fried the food. What I want to deep fried is a strategy to reheat it. Generally, no, because it's going to come out very greasy, generally. 5 minutes left. It's a made-up time, but 5 minutes left. Anyways, here we go. Let's see here. There's nothing like warm bread. What is the best way to heat a bread? You just answered my question, thanks. Oh, I'm glad I could be helpful. Okay, honestly, the little story I told you about how my mom reheat. Oh yeah, pizza's done. Look at this. Whoa, that's hot. I'm gonna see if we can show the camera. Look at this. Check that out. And let me see if you can hear this. That's like fresh pizza crust. And I should have just thrown this one in with no water. But usually, if I didn't add that steam, it'd be hard and dry. You can see it's got some flexibility. It's all soft and gooey again. But the most important part for me, it's like pillowy. That's that moisture. And going back to this last question about bread, same baguette or whatever, you need a lot of moisture in the beginning because you're kind of I need that moisture to go to the middle, otherwise it's tough stale bread. You can unstale bread this way. A slice, whole baguette, croissants, biscuits, a lot of moisture in the beginning, and then dry out in the end. It's super, super awesome. I like the brown paper bag trick. You can literally I'll demo it sometime. Reheating roasted chicken thighs to what? Let's see here. Let's just say you want them reheated and their thighs, like the question. You could sous vide them. Again, if you want them crispy on the outside, you could sous vide them, then deep fry them. That is something that would be really good deep fried because a chicken thigh is like big and hearty and has enough mass to stand up to deep frying in the end. You could air fry chicken thighs, but I wouldn't just go from whole cold chicken thigh to air fryer. I would go low temperature oven, maybe like 185 or 200 degrees to reheat it. And then once I'm like, ooh, it's reheated, I would take the tray out, crank the air fryer up, pop it in for 5 minutes to crisp up the outside. You could sous vide it, air fry it, but I like the combo of low temperature, high temperature for a lot of that sort of stuff, especially meats. Robert asks, how do you reheat fettuccine Alfredo? Well, I've never had leftover fettuccine Alfredo, so I don't know this one. Just kidding. I would say fettuccine Alfredo, probably not going to deep fry it. Probably not going to sous vide it. Microwave might be a good one for that, actually. And here's why. Fettuccine Alfredo, you got pasta, you got creamy, moist sauce with lots of fat in it. The pasta, the longer the pasta takes to reheat, the mushier it's going to get because it's going to pull moisture from the sauce. And since I can't deep fry fettuccine Alfredo, unless you chill it and cut it into cubes and bread it, then you could. The microwave is going to be really, really good because it's going to heat up all the water in the sauce and the noodle the fastest. So that's something that actually I would argue, even if it's fresh or frozen, microwave would be the best strategy for reheating an old pasta. Okay. Can you remind me what the danger zone is? Like when in doubt, how do I have to get something, or how do I heat it up for so long or whatever? Temperature danger zone. Okay, it's changed over all the years. And generally speaking, they talk about the temperature danger zone being there's a cold end and a hot end, meaning don't quote me on any of this and don't serve your customers in your restaurant based on this chart. Okay, so temperature danger zone, the TDZ, okay? So foods, say frozen / cold, let's say over here, this is 40 degrees F. Dun, 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 dun. Here's air fry over here at whatever, 400 degrees F. About here is 140 degrees F. This is all very knowable, Googleable information, anywhere on the internet too, by the way. This zone right here is usually referred to as temperature danger zone. And usually that means if the food is already contaminated, by the way, and it has a bunch of other qualities that make it prone to colony-forming units and et cetera, infections and whatever, it has to be in here usually for 4 hours. So the temperature danger zone is in this zone usually for more than 4 hours, meaning if you're in this zone for less than 4 hours, you're fine. That's usually generally what it means in broad strokes. Thanksgiving is coming. Thank you for the reminder. What foods are best to cook ahead and then reheat for the big dinner? Ooh, I like that one. So any of the starchy stuff, like a potato gratin, carrots and parsnips, even roasted carrots, mashed potatoes, all that sort of stuff that you kind of want to hammer. When I say hammer, like really cook it and make it mushy, or really cook it and make it mushy and crusty. Any of the starchy foods, really, really good candidates to make ahead, keep cold, or freeze, then reheat later. They'll save you time. Anything that's bright green, I usually like to do last minute. You know, green beans, sometimes sauteed spinach, whatever that thing is, a salad, you know, make that fresh. The stuff in the middle, like, you know, maybe you want to reheat and cook it in advance all your starchy stuff to save you time, and then you can focus on just the turkey or just the prime rib or whatever it is, and the green stuff, right? Even sauce, even gravy, all that sort of stuff. If it's not super temperature sensitive, or it's like temperature durable, like mashed potatoes, you can kind of heat up, cool down, right? How many times do you want to heat up and cool down your green beans? You know, can I reheat something twice? Tonight, tomorrow night, or once I reheat, do I eat it or lose it? Can I reheat something twice? You can reheat things as many times as you want. I'm gonna tell you a true story. I have like made a roast chicken and then I forgot about it or something. I don't know. I just didn't eat it all. Then I picked all the meat off. Then I had the carcass sitting in the fridge for a few days. Then I ate some of the chicken later. Then I put the chicken back in with the scraps. And then I made a broth out of it. And then that broth, I made like a soup out of it. Then I chilled the soup. And then I might have froze it again or put it in the fridge for a little bit. Then reheated some. And then even then, I've had times where I'm like, man, this chicken soup broth is good because it has 10 flavors over a decade in it. And everything in it's mushy. And I'll heat up the whole soup, strain all the stuff out, and then I have this like big master broth again. And that broth has kind of been reheated like 10 times now. That's kind of crazy, but it's really, really good. So it kind of depends on like chasing down the texture of what you want to. You know, like a broth, you'll lose some light volatile aroma compounds, but you can always add fresh herbs in there too, you know. That's 30 minutes. They're putting it on the reader. So I guess that's it. We're going to see you at the next Bravo Plus. Ask me anything. Ask an expert. Thank you for joining. I hope you learned something. And yeah, see you at Chef Steps. See you in the app. And thank you and goodbye. I'm Grant, everybody.